In the heart of rural Benin, nestled between sacred groves and ancient baobab trees, lies the village of Kpomas, where the old ways still breathe through every drumbeat and ritual chant. In this land, time does not flow in a straight line. The dead are not gone, they linger in the whispering winds, the creaking trees, and most powerfully, in dreams. Ancestors are not memories, but ever-present guardians, arbiters of justice, and keepers of sacred vows. Every home has its shrine, and every child grows up knowing, you do not defy the spirits of your blood. It is here that our story unfolds, not in some distant past, but in recent years, when modernity and tradition began to clash like thunderclouds. Smartphones buzzed even in the shadow of ancient idols, and children learned French in school while still whispering Fon or Yoruba prayers at their bedside. Some, like Ama Yovo, a young woman of fierce intelligence and quiet strength, tried to walk between these two worlds. She believed in progress, but also respected the old ways, until love made her forget a sacred warning. Alma had fallen in love with Kojo Dosso, a charming, well-educated man from a neighboring village. He was handsome, ambitious, and seemed everything her heart desired. Her parents approved. The match looked perfect. Yet, no one could shake a strange feeling that lingered in the air as their wedding day approached. The village elders grew restless. The ancestral priestess, Mami Agbail, kept silent, but her eyes clouded with foreboding. The omens were subtle, yet unrelenting. Then came the day of the wedding, a celebration that would never be forgotten, not because of its beauty, but because of what happened just before the vows were exchanged. In full daylight, before hundreds of guests, something ancient tore through the veil of the living world. A spirit, a presence no one could deny, descended into the ceremony. And it came not with blessings, but with a warning. This is the story of a forbidden marriage, of secrets long buried, and of an ancestor's unwavering duty to protect the bloodline, even from love itself. A tale passed in hushed tones around fires, taught to children as a lesson that in Africa, the past is never past. Alma Yovo was born beneath the dancing moonlight of a harmattan night, when the dry wind swept across the earth and rattled the palm fronds like bones clinking in a ritual. The villagers took it as a sign, some said the spirits had come to witness her birth. Her mother, Yawa, a respected herbalist, wrapped the infant in cloth soaked in palm oil and whispered a prayer to the ancestors. May she walk in two worlds and betray neither, she said. It was a prayer, a blessing, and a warning, all at once. From her earliest days, Alma carried something unusual in her eyes. It wasn't just her beauty, which was undeniable, the copper glow of her skin. Her almond-shaped eyes that flickered like candlelight, her quiet, thoughtful presence. It was the way she looked at things, like she could see beyond them. As a child, she would sit alone under the great irako tree in the family courtyard, speaking softly to things no one else could see. At 7, she told her grandmother that her late grandfather, Kwaku Yovo, had visited her in a dream and warned her not to eat the mushrooms growing near the river. Days later, the village mourned a young boy who had died after doing just that. From then on, Alma was watched, not with fear, but with reverence. She was one of those children the elders called spirit-touched. Neither cursed nor blessed, but chosen. Close to the veil. As she grew older, Alma embraced education, walking miles to attend a missionary school in the nearby town of Ouida. She learned French, algebra, and read Shakespeare. But she never forgot her roots. Even as she read Voltaire by lantern light, she still poured libations every dusk, whispering to the clay figurines that represented her ancestors. Her heart lived in two homes, one of textbooks and ambition, the other of ritual chants and sacred earth. It was in her final year of university, during a cultural heritage festival, that she met Kojo Dosso. He was tall, with a confident stride and a voice like warm wood smoke. He spoke both English and fluently, recited Yoruba proverbs, and had a degree in agribusiness. Kojo was modern, but respectful of tradition, at least on the surface. He admired Alma's intellect, and she was drawn to his vision, his sense of purpose. They began to court. Quiet walks through markets, late-night phone calls filled with shared dreams, conversations about building a life that honored both modern opportunity and ancestral wisdom. It was Kojo who first suggested marriage. Alma, hesitant at first, finally agreed. The stars seemed to align. Their families exchanged kola nuts in a small betrothal ceremony. Elders gave their blessing. Even Alma's father, Iadil, once skeptical, declared, "The ancestors will dance for this union." But not everyone rejoiced. Mommy Agbail, the village's aging priestess, was notably silent. She had once cradled Alma in her arms, smeared white clay on her forehead, and declared her marked by the rivers. For years, she had watched the girl with knowing eyes. When she heard of the wedding, she made no comment, only went into the forest to consult the spirits. Upon her return, she looked tired. "Not all water that flows from the hills is clean," she whispered to her apprentice. Alma noticed, too, that her dreams changed in the weeks before the wedding. Shadows flickered at the edge of her sleep. She would wake with a strange weight on her chest, unable to breathe, the taste of clay in her mouth. One night, she heard her name whispered over and over again, "Alma. Alma," in a voice old and brittle as dried leaves. But when she awoke, no one was there. She dismissed it as stress. Kojo, ever rational, brushed it off. "Dreams are echoes of our nerves," he said, stroking her hair. "We'll be fine. We're meant for each other." But the omens kept coming. The family goat gave birth to a kid with two heads, one crying, the other silent. The ceremonial drum used in all Yovo weddings cracked open by itself. A palm tree near Alma's mother's shrine fell in the night, though there had been no storm. And still, the preparations continued. Invitations were sent. Cloth was bought. The date was fixed. The day before the wedding, Alma stood at the family altar, surrounded by the smell of incense and the faint hum of drumming from distant hills. She knelt before the ancestral shrine and whispered, "If you have something to say, say it now." But the clay figures were silent. She did not know that the spirits had already spoken. The sun rose heavy and red on the morning before the wedding, casting long, copper shadows across the village of Kpomas. It was the kind of dawn that elders would point to and mutter, "This is not a good light." The birds were unusually quiet. The dogs refused to leave their sleeping spots. Even the wind seemed reluctant to move. It was the kind of morning where the air felt like it was holding its breath. Inside her modest clay compound, Mommy Agbail was already awake. She had not slept. All night she had sat before the shrine of Ogaun, the guardian of justice and sacred duty, grinding kola nuts and whispering invocations into the flames. The ancestors had spoken, but their message was not one she could easily carry. There was a law among the spirits: never interfere in the matters of love unless a greater law is being broken. Mommy Agbail had learned this long ago, when she was still a girl tending the fire for her grandmother's ceremonies. But this was different. The spirits had come unbidden, full of wrath and urgency. One in particular, the ancient matriarch of the Yovo lineage, Nana Akusa, had risen from her rest to speak. Her voice, hollow and booming, had shaken the walls of the shrine. "This union must not happen. Blood calls to blood. The oath was made before breath. She does not remember, but I do. We all do." Mommy Agbail had listened in silence. She dared not ask for details. When an ancestor speaks in such a tone, the job of the priestess is not to question, it is to carry out. But how could she? The wedding was a heartbeat away. To stop it would bring shame, confusion, maybe even madness. And yet, if she stayed silent, something far worse would awaken. Later that morning, Alma came to see her. The young woman looked tired, her eyes rimmed with shadow. But she smiled politely and knelt before the old priestess. "Mommy," she said gently, "I had a strange dream again. A woman standing in a pool of water. Her mouth moved but no sound came out. Then she pointed at me and vanished." Mommy Agbail's eyes narrowed. That was no ordinary dream. The woman in the water was a symbol well known to those who served the spirits. It meant a message unspoken, a vow submerged. The signs were coming too fast now. Too strong. The priestess said nothing at first. She stared into the small charcoal pot burning beside her, watching the smoke curl into patterns. Finally, she spoke. "Alma. Sometimes the river does not flow because something is blocking it. Sometimes a path is too quiet because something waits ahead." Alma tilted her head, confused. "You mean we should postpone the wedding?" Mommy shook her head slowly. "I cannot tell you what to do, child. But I will tell you this. You must ask your father about the vow he made to his mother before she died. Ask him before you wear the dress. Ask him with both ears open." Alma left, troubled. Her father. She adored him. A quiet man, deeply spiritual, but not one to talk of the past. He rarely spoke of his own mother, who had died when Alma was very small. But that evening, just before sunset, she went to his room and asked. At first, Iadil Yovo did not answer. He looked away, fiddling with the edge of his walking stick. When she pressed him, his voice cracked. "It is nothing," he said. "Old stories. Superstition. What does it matter now?" But Alma would not let it go. Finally, Iadil told her the truth. Many years ago, before Alma was born, there had been a promise made to the ancestors, that the bloodline of the Yovos must never marry into the Dosso family. It was an old wound, dating back to a violent betrayal during a time of famine. 2 brothers, one from each family, had fought over land. One killed the other in secret, and when the truth emerged, the Yovos vowed never to unite their blood with the Dossos again. The elders sealed the vow with a ritual offering and an ancestral covenant, calling on Nana Akusa to witness. "But that was long ago," Iadil whispered. "We thought it was buried with the bones." Alma felt her blood chill. Buried bones still speak, she thought. They speak in dreams. They speak in silence. They speak through the ones we forget. She told Kojo that night. They were sitting beneath the neem tree, away from the noise of wedding preparations. Kojo frowned, waving it off. "These are fairy tales, Alma. We are the new generation. We must build our own path. Do you really think the dead care who we love?" But Alma wasn't sure anymore. That night, the dreams returned, but different this time. She saw the woman in the water again, but now her mouth moved with sound. And this time, Alma heard the words. "You are her blood. If you do not stop, I will." She awoke screaming. The morning of the wedding arrived like a stone falling into still water. Everyone was excited. The villagers gathered. Drums beat in the courtyard. Women sang praises and painted Alma's feet with red dye. Kojo stood tall, proud in his agbada. The sky was unnaturally clear. The air too still. No one knew what was coming. No one believed the ancestors would show up. But they would. And they would not come to bless. They would come to stop. The wedding began with the rhythm of joy. From early morning, Kpomas transformed into a place of celebration. The courtyards echoed with ululations. Drummers pounded with ferocity, sending vibrations through the soil itself. Women in brilliant wrappers swayed and danced. Children chased one another between palm trees. The aroma of goat stew, jollof rice, and fried plantains filled the air like incense rising to the heavens. Alma sat in the inner chamber of her family compound, surrounded by her aunties and cousins, her body being prepared for union. They adorned her with beads of coral and ivory. Her skin was oiled until it shone like sunlit bronze. Her face was painted with white clay symbols, markings meant to protect and bless. And yet, in her chest, her heart trembled. She remembered her dream. The voice of the woman. The words, "If you do not stop, I will." Outside, Kojo stood beneath a ceremonial canopy of palm leaves and red fabric, beaming with pride. The officiants, both civil and spiritual, were present. Elders sat in rows. Friends from neighboring villages had traveled for the event. A griot began chanting the history of the Yovo family, his voice rising and falling like waves against rocks. He was followed by a second griot, this one from Kojo's lineage, offering praise to the Dasaus. Everything was going perfectly. Until it wasn't. At exactly midday. Just as the final ritual before the vows was to begin, the pouring of libation to the ancestors, a sudden gust of wind ripped through the courtyard. Chairs toppled. Drums fell silent. Cloths lifted from tables and danced wildly in the air. The priest holding the calabash of palm wine froze. So did everyone else. And then they saw her. A woman in white, barefoot. Her face veiled with strands of cowrie shells, standing in the center of the gathering. No one had seen her enter. No one recognized her. Yet her presence was unmistakable, it was not of this world. The old women began to murmur. The griots fell silent mid-sentence. Birds scattered from the trees. The priestess Mommy Agbail, who had been watching from the edge of the gathering, dropped her staff and sank to her knees. "She has come," Mommy whispered, barely audible. "Nana Akusa has come." The mysterious woman raised her arms slowly, and the wind ceased. Complete silence blanketed the courtyard, no breath, no drum, no footstep. Alma, still inside the bridal chamber, suddenly felt her legs grow weak. She clutched the beaded curtain and peered through. Her breath caught in her throat. "That's her," she whispered. "That's the woman from my dreams." Kojo, confused but trying to keep composure, stepped forward. "Madam. You are interrupting a sacred moment. Please." But his voice stopped as the woman turned to face him. Her veil parted just slightly. And Kojo collapsed to his knees. Later. No one could quite say what they saw. Some claimed her eyes held fire. Others swore her face was a mirror showing past sins. What everyone agreed on was this. Her voice, when it came, was ancient and thunderous, layered with generations of sorrow and fury. "You were warned," she said, her voice echoing in the marrow of every bone. "This union is a wound reopening. The blood of betrayal runs in your veins. You would tie together what was cursed to remain apart." Alma stepped into the courtyard then, still in her wedding attire. Her voice trembling. "Who are you?" The woman turned to her. And in a gentler tone, but no less commanding, she said. "I am the river that bore your father. I am the womb that bore the curse. I am Nana Akusa, first mother of the Yovo line. You are my daughter's daughter. And I will not let you fall into the fire." A collective gasp spread across the courtyard. Many elders dropped to their knees. Some wept. Even the children were silent. Alma took a step forward. "But I love him." Nana Akusa raised a hand, and the sky darkened. Love is not always righteous. Not when it breaks sacred vows. Not when it awakens buried blood debts. Mommy Agbail stepped forward now, speaking for the first time. "Nana. What would you have us do?" The spirit turned her gaze to the ground, where cracks had begun to form in the earth below the ceremonial platform. "Let the ceremony end. Let no vow be spoken. Let no union be sealed. Return to the path that was forgotten. Restore what was broken. And then, just as suddenly as she had come, the spirit vanished. No flash. No smoke. Just absence. The wind returned. The birds resumed their song. But no one moved. The wedding had been undone. Alma stood in the middle of the courtyard, her dress still beautiful. Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of awe, confusion, heartbreak, and something else, understanding. Kojo rose slowly, his hands shaking. He looked at Alma, but neither of them spoke. What words could capture what had just occurred? Mommy Agbail stepped to Alma's side and laid a gentle hand on her shoulder. You were loved by your ancestor today, she said. Loved enough to be stopped. And so it was that the wedding never happened. But the story of the spirit that walked in daylight, the ancestor who came not to bless, but to forbid, would live on forever in the memory of Kpomas. 3 days had passed since the spirit came. The courtyard where the wedding was meant to take place now lay still. The decorations torn by wind, the food long rotted, the drums quiet as stone. No one spoke of the event in public, yet every household whispered of it. Children reenacted the ghostly arrival with cloth over their heads. Elders warned their grandchildren never to ignore the dreams. And those who doubted the power of the ancestors now walked with heads low and feet careful. Alma remained in the house, eyes hollow, spirit heavy. Her once joyful energy was now wrapped in silence. Kojo had returned to his village without a word. No farewell, no blame, only an understanding deeper than speech, something greater than love had spoken. But the dreams did not stop. Each night, Nana Akusa returned, not angry now, but solemn, sorrowful. She stood beside a tree on fire that did not burn, whispering words that Alma could never fully catch. One message, however, remained constant. Find the place where the oath was buried. Heal the root. Only then will your soul be free. Alma could not ignore this. She had been chosen to inherit more than her grandmother's beads. She had inherited an unfinished story, and now the spirits demanded she write its end. She went to Mommy Agbail at dawn. The priestess, seated before her shrine, did not look surprised. You've come, she said. It is time. They sat in a small, round temple at the village's edge. Smoke from smoldering herbs curled into the air. The clay walls were covered with symbols, ancient Adinkra signs, cowrie shells, woven charms of bone and ash. Alma sat across from the old woman. The firelight dancing on her cheeks. Tell me the truth, Alma said. All of it. What happened between the Yovos and the Dasaus? What was the oath? Mommy Agbail exhaled slowly. Her eyes clouding as she reached back through time. Nearly a century ago, during the Great Famine, your great-great-grandfather, Oba Yovo, and his blood brother, Kobinan Doso, ruled adjacent lands. They were closer than kin, raised together, fought together, shared bread and laughter. But when the famine came, and hunger opened men's hearts to fear, that bond was tested. She paused to sip water before continuing. Oba had stored grain in secret. Kobinan came to beg for help for his starving village. Oba refused. He feared sharing would doom both. Kobinan left cursing him. That night, Oba was found dead, his skull broken with a sacred pestle used only in ancestral rites. Alma's eyes widened. You mean? Kobinan killed him. But he was never punished. No court touched him. The elders, afraid of civil war, made a different decision. They sealed a covenant. That no descendant of Oba Yovo would ever marry into the line of Kobinan Doso. That their blood would never mix again. It was sworn with libation and blood. The vow was buried under the sacred Irako tree, the oldest tree in the region. And the spirits were called to witness. Mommy's eyes met Alma's. But as time passed, the story faded. Only the vow remained, resting, until you and Kojo brought it back to life. Alma felt her body grow cold. Then that's what Nana Akusa meant, the oath was not just broken, it was awoken. The priestess nodded. And the spirits do not forget. Alma stood. I need to find the tree. I need to see it. That afternoon, with Mommy Agbail beside her, she journeyed deep into the forest outside Kpomas. The path narrowed, the air thick with the scent of moss and old bark. Birds grew silent as they approached a clearing, a place where even hunters did not tread. There it stood, the Irako tree, ancient and massive, its roots like serpents coiled into the ground. Some said it was as old as the earth itself. Offerings lay at its base, broken clay pots, animal bones, melted wax. The tree hummed with unseen energy. Alma approached with reverence. Her fingers touched the bark, and a vision overtook her. She saw two men, Oba and Kobinin, arguing, their faces lined with despair. She saw blood spill. She saw the ceremony, women wailing. Priests invoking spirits, a ritual dagger slicing the air. And she saw a burial, a bundle wrapped in white cloth lowered into a pit beneath the tree. Alma collapsed to her knees. Tears streamed down her face. It wasn't just a promise, she said. It was a wound, sealed in the earth. Mommy Agbail touched her shoulder. And now, child, it is your task to cleanse it. How? With truth. With ritual. With offering. And most of all, with the will to heal. The priestess began drawing a sacred circle in chalk and ash. She lit herbs of atonement, akuru leaves, black kola. Bitter incense. Alma knelt inside the circle. The wind picked up. Repeat after me, Mommy intoned. I am the daughter of both pain and hope. I come to break no law, but to honor truth. I return to the roots to ask for peace. Alma repeated each word, her voice steady. As she finished, the wind howled once, and then stopped. And in that moment, the earth beneath the tree cracked slightly, just enough to reveal something buried, a bundle of cowrie shells, bone charms, and two blood-stained feathers, untouched by time. Alma knew then. This was the original covenant, still guarded, still remembered. She lifted the bundle and held it high. Let this oath be witnessed again, she cried. But not to divide. To restore. The wind returned, not harsh, but warm. In the rustle of the leaves, she heard a voice. You have done what many could not. Nana Akusa. She did not appear in form. But her presence surrounded Alma like a mother's embrace. The spirit's voice was softer now, at peace. Your line is cleansed. The debt is settled. You are free. The sun broke through the canopy above, casting golden light on Alma's face. For the first time in weeks, she smiled, not out of joy, but out of deep, ancestral relief. The night after the ritual at the sacred Irako tree was the first night Alma slept peacefully. The forest no longer hummed with warnings. The shadows in her dreams no longer whispered her name with dread. Instead, in the darkness of sleep, she found herself standing in a field of tall grass under a violet sky. The wind was soft. Crickets sang. There, across from her, stood Nana Akusa. She was not veiled this time. Her face, worn by time yet full of regal strength, bore the marks of an elder whose blood carried generations. Her eyes were kind, but firm, the eyes of one who had watched too much history to be swayed by tears. You did not run, Nana said. That is what made the difference. Alma bowed her head. I didn't know how much I carried. I thought love was enough. The spirit stepped closer, placing a hand on Alma's shoulder. Love must walk beside memory. Otherwise, it forgets what it builds upon. You carried more than your heart, you carried our unfinished story. You've closed a circle. Alma looked up, voice quiet. What happens now? Now, said Nana, the fire has cooled. You may plant something new in the ashes. Then she smiled, not the distant, shadowed smile of a spirit, but the warm, weary smile of a grandmother proud of what her child had done. And with that, she vanished, leaving only the wind. Alma awoke just before dawn. The air in her room was cool. Outside, roosters called to the sun. The sounds of the village waking up reached her ears, women fetching water, children playing near the well, life slowly returning to normal. But Alma was not the same girl who had once prepared for a wedding in white. She sat up, breathed deeply, and whispered toward the window, "Thank you, Nana." Later that day, a quiet knock came at the compound gate. It was Kojo. He stood humbly, dressed in simple clothes, not the proud garments of a groom, not the confidence of a man used to charming crowds. His eyes were tired, but not broken. In his hands, he held a small calabash wrapped in red cloth, a gift of reconciliation. Alma met him at the threshold. They stood in silence for a moment. There was no anger. No blame. Only the shared knowledge of what had passed between them, not just emotions, but generations. I wanted to say goodbye properly, Kojo said. And to thank you, for listening to something I was too proud to hear. Alma took the calabash and nodded. We both listened, in the end. And now we both carry the story. He looked at her. Something like sorrow in his eyes. Do you think, in another life, we could have? We did, she interrupted gently. In the life before this one. But that story ended long before we were born. He smiled. May your next story be lighter. May yours be deeper, she replied. They didn't embrace. They didn't cry. They simply stood together. Two branches that had grown too far apart to be braided, but still rooted in the same soil. Kojo left. Alma turned and walked back into her family's courtyard. Inside, Mommy Agbail sat beside the cooking fire, her hands busy with herbs and crushed bark. He came, the priestess said, without looking up. Alma nodded. You have done well, child. Not just for yourself. For your line. Alma sat beside her. I don't know what I'll do now. I thought I had a future. A path. You still do, Mommy said. But now, it's one you'll build with clean hands. With the ancestors walking beside you, not ahead of you. Alma thought about that. For the first time, the future did not feel heavy. It felt, waiting. In the weeks that followed, she began to visit nearby villages, speaking with elders, recording their stories, mapping forgotten lineages, collecting rituals and songs nearly lost to time. She didn't know it yet, but she would one day become a guardian of memory, just as Nana Akusa had been. People would come to her not just for herbs or blessings, but to understand what the dreams meant. And every time she told the story of the spirit who came to stop a wedding, she ended it the same way. The ancestors do not punish for pleasure. They protect the truth. And when we listen, they teach us how to begin again. The season had changed. The rains had come and gone, and with them, the heat that once hung heavy over Kpomas had lifted. The air was softer now, the trees fuller, and the red earth, newly nourished, bore green shoots and wildflowers. In the village square, a structure had been raised, a simple circle of woven palm fronds and clay pots, surrounded by 13 small altars, each dedicated to a different ancestor of the Yovo bloodline. It was time for the ceremony of reconciliation, a rite held only once every few generations, when a spiritual wound is not only acknowledged, but formally closed before the eyes of the living and the dead. Alma stood at the center. She was dressed not in bridal white, but in a flowing indigo robe marked with gold adinkra symbols, ebon for protection, dwa for healing, ebon again for home. Her head was wrapped in deep blue. Her neck ringed with the same coral beads once worn by Nana Akusa. To her left stood Mommy Agbail, leaning slightly on her staff, her hair now silver as moonlight. Around them gathered elders. Children, women in song, men with drums, and families from both the Yovo and Dosso lines. Yes, even the Dossaus had come. Reconciliation was not only for the dead. In the clearing, a shallow pit had been dug beneath the sacred Irako tree. Into it, Amma placed the bundle once buried with the ancestral curse, now wrapped in white cloth and sprinkled with ash, herbs, and tears. With both hands, she poured a calabash of palm wine onto the earth and spoke. To the ones who carried our anger. To the ones who bore the silence. To the ones whose names were forgotten because they hurt too much to speak. Today, we remember you not with blame, but with understanding. You fought, and we bled. But today, we heal. Then she raised her voice, speaking the final words taught to her by Mommy Agbail, passed down from the first priestesses of the land. May the blood no longer burn. May the names no longer war. May the ancestors rest, for we walk with open hands. The drums began, slow and low. One by one, the people stepped forward to place offerings into the pit, a wooden carving from a Dosso elder. A necklace from a Yovo widow, food, salt, cloth. The air was thick with the scent of frankincense and herbs. Then came the silence, intentional and deep. The drummers stopped. The children stilled. Even the wind seemed to still in reverence. In that silence, something subtle, beautiful, and utterly real happened. A bird, one no one had seen before, descended from the Irako tree. Small and bright white, it fluttered above the circle once, twice, then landed on the edge of the pit, cocking its head as if listening. A collective gasp rose. Then the bird flew upward. Circled 3 times, and vanished into the sun. Mommy Agbail whispered, "She is pleased." And Amma, for the first time in her life, felt the ancestors fall completely silent. Not from anger. Not from pain. But from rest. A year later. Amma's name had spread beyond Kpomas. She had become a keeper of stories, a healer of bloodlines. People came from distant regions, Ashanti lands. Yoruba enclaves, Benin's port cities, to tell her their dreams, ask her what the spirits wanted, or to trace back forgotten curses hidden in marriage, land, and name. But she was not called a priestess. She called herself something different, a bridge. She taught young girls how to read bones and books. She built a center beside the Irako tree where ancestral stories were written, painted, sung, and never buried again. Kojo visited once, a year later. He had become a teacher in the city. Starting an agricultural program named after his own grandmother. They shared palm wine and laughter. They were no longer lovers. But something stronger, people who had walked through fire together and lived to tell the story. That night, after he left, Amma sat beneath the stars. The air smelled of clean earth and old wisdom. She lit a small fire and poured libation. "Nana Akusa," she whispered, "I hope you are resting. Your blood walks forward now, not backward. Your name is no longer hidden beneath silence. You can sleep." And as the flames flickered, a soft wind stirred the grass. No visions. No dreams. Just peace.